Chris Kohl, we
Yo,
found you. Welcome. How you doing, bud?
good man. How's this? I'm trying to. There, is that better?
Yeah, yeah, that looks good.
Yeah, man.
How's things, Cole?
Good. Finally connecting with Brother Z.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Stoked. Yeah. So, yeah, you were just kind of. I just kind of jumped in, and you were giving a little background on your beautiful film that you just put out.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, Solving for Z was just kind of a journey of wanting to talk about risk in a way that was transparent and honest to my own experience. And, I think, Cole, something that, we've talked about is risk is what's made our lives rich and full of adventure. But we've also been around long enough to see the dark side of risk and see the loss part of the equation. And I think we both find ourselves, or maybe I'll speak for me really, that I find myself in a place where, I've chosen to come back to the mountains and come back to re-engage with something that I recognize is risky, but just brings so much joy to my life at the same time.
Yeah, that's kind of why I initially reached out to you about a month or so ago after seeing your film. It was, seeing your experience and seeing what happened to you, and then seeing what you went through, and then seeing that you had 2 kids, and seeing all these parallels between the 2 sports, 2 different mediums, 2 different, action sports, or 2 different things that we do, but in different areas. And you use the word selfish, and that kind of triggers something in me because I get asked that a lot. Like, are you going to go back? Are you going to go surf big waves again? And, that's one of the questions that, people often ask. And I wanted to explore that with you at some point during this conversation. And maybe just for your audience that don't know who I am, I can give a brief little background
Please.
I'm here in Hawaii, aloha, and I'm a surfer. I grew up, luckily, just happened to be here, and I grew up in the ocean, and I've spent some time in the mountains too. That's actually where I met Z. But surfing is kind of my main passion, and it's where I express myself and feel most connected. And I had I've had accidents over the year, and I've had friends. I've lost friends. Like lots of us in the mountains and in the ocean, and as Z was saying earlier, just kind of that comes with experience and age and dedication. We're doing something that's inherently risky. We're putting ourselves in positions of risk, something we don't have control over. So oftentimes things do happen, and we can do things to mitigate that, and we'll get into that. But just hearing his story and then telling you a little bit about my story here. I had an accident on New Year's Eve last year where I hit my head on the bottom at Pipeline, and I cracked my skull. I got a spiderweb fracture. I got knocked out, and I was rescued by a lifeguard on a jet ski who found me floating face down. I was luckily wearing one of those Patagonia impact suits. The ones, I don't know if you've seen those, they're padded. And I was floating, something is relatively new to our sport. And I was wearing them because we were out on the jet ski towing in earlier, and I had my Pipeline board, and we stopped there. And I caught a wave that wasn't, it was a big day at Pipeline, but it wasn't something like way different than anything I've ever done. It was within the parameters of like my normalcy, I guess. But it was obviously a life-threatening wave because of what happened. And I pulled in and into the barrel, into the tube part of the wave, and fell. And when I hit my head, I blacked out. And the next thing I remember was being on the beach with the lifeguards, with an oxygen mask on a flat board. And luckily, Andrew had pulled me out, and I went straight into Queen's Hospital, and they cut the skull all off here, and they pulled it off and sutured the meningus layer, put it back on with a bunch of plates. So, you know, long story short, I'm super lucky to be here and super fortunate for all the steps that happened to allow me to be sitting here talking to you right now in this moment. And then, you know, after that, the recovery and all that, and then the, you know, just like you, your incident with the avalanche, just like there's this, you go through some stuff, you know, like a lot of stuff goes through your head that wasn't there before after something like that happens. And then people ask you, people talk to you, oh, are you going to go back? And then you got to have that discussion with them. And every time I feel like it changes, you know, day to day, month to month. And as I get further from the accident, I'm, you know, the answer is a little different. But when you said selfish, I was like, because people ask me that, and I've been like struggling with that, because that's something for me, is like having 2 kids, and then you start to think, well, is it selfish? Should I go back? But then I have some like thoughts on it. We can share those. But anyway, that's me, and that's I live in the North Shore. I grew up here, and yeah, my life is surfing. But I love the mountains too, and I respect everything you guys do in the mountains. And I think there's just so many cool parallels from Malka to Mackay, like we said in the post, which means mountains to oceans. And I'm just super fortunate to be here talking to Z, because I look up to him and what he does in that world. So right on, Z. Good to finally connect, brother.
Yeah, absolutely, Kohl. And you know, I know how many times people you know, say this after an accident, but you know, I just would say I'm just so glad you are here. You know, I remember so keenly reading the circumstances of your accident, and really like just interpreting it as a guy who really came back from death, and who got really as close to, you know, leaving his body as a human can get. And that's just such a heavy journey. It's such a real journey. I'd love to even just have you follow up for a moment and tell me, like, as you stand, you're maybe just over a year out, so a little bit further than me, and
Yeah.
what, you know, what are some of the things that you feel like have changed in your world, or some of the lessons that you're taking and passing on?
Yeah, well, one thing I've realized, and I thought maybe I would like be okay with not going back into the big surf and doing it, but I realized it would be worse. I'd be worse off if I didn't go back, and I feel like I would feel like I was benched, like on a sporting team on the, you know, the day of the year, and then the coach pushes you off the bench. Like, that's the feelings that I would have. And I thought that maybe, you know, initially I thought that maybe, oh, well, I'm going to be okay with not feeling this desire to go back into these big waves, or do this thing, maybe. But then as I got better physically, as I got, spent more time in the water in small waves, you know, I guess somewhat returned to some sort of like normal patterns that are definitely different than before my accident. I can tell you a little bit about that, but I spent a lot of time thinking about this. Kind of have this theory that, you know, not to discredit like what we're doing in this lifetime and what we're eating, but I think there's a lot of evidence that supports that we were hunters and gatherers, and primarily hunters in our past. And you know, the way our shoulders evolved, the way our feet evolved, the way our stomach shrank, the acidity of our stomach to digest. There's lots of different things. We can get into that if we want, but I have a strong belief that we were, so hear me out. So I have a strong belief that we were hunters, and within hunting, hunting is not easy. To hunt a seal, to hunt a woolly mammoth, to hunt you know, a buffalo. I mean, it takes preparation. It takes a group effort. It's a challenge. There's so much involved in going out and killing something and bringing it home to the tribe or village or whatever, and feeding everyone. And I think that what we do, like, we're genetically coded, or it's in our DNA. you know, they talk about nature and nurture. Like our conditioning, yours it would be, you know, the mountains, because that's where you are and that's what you love. Mine would be the ocean, because that's where I grew up, where I was conditioned in. But there's this challenge, there's this drive, there's this like code in us that we can't, to take risks and to do this. And then I asked myself how I felt after. So it was really big 4 days ago, 5 days ago here, the biggest swell of the year. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go, and I'm going to go out there and see what happens. And one thing that I have taken away from the accident that I never totally was at peace with before the accident was expectations, placing happiness in the future, placing happiness and, oh, if I get this wave, or if I nail that line or whatever in your world, then I'll be happy. It was always, it was like, oh, you know, I always kind of like was thinking about that, but I've lost a lot of that, I feel like. And I go out now, and I went on that day last week with zero expectations, just a real peace with it, but just so excited to be out in this like incredible event. Like it only happens it was almost the best I've ever seen one of the waves out here in all my life, and it was huge and perfect, and I felt this calm and peace that I've never felt before. It was weird, and I ended up getting a beautiful wave, and I came home that night and to my kids and wife, and I was like just so overwhelmed with these feelings, and I, you know, just tried to sit back and just kind of look at, or just sense the feelings that I had at that moment. And there was, you know, there was this happiness, there was like this accomplishment, and there was like, it was almost overflowing. And I feel like that would be the same feeling, like if you were, you know, for, you know, millions of years, if we were hunting and we bring back a big, you know, buffalo or whatever it was, and we bring it back to the tribe, like there's a sense of accomplishment. There's adoration because that you feel. There's all these things. So I don't know if, like when people ask me, are you going to go back? It was like this, and is it selfish? I'm struggling with that, and that's kind of where my head's at now, because I couldn't tell myself no. And like, I'm sure you struggle with this too. I'm sure you're feeling that same feeling on different levels. I don't know where your head's at, but that's why I wanted to talk to you. So can you reflect on a little bit of that? So.
Yeah, I love it, Kohl. I mean, I love it, man. The way I find myself expressing it a lot these days is that I think earlier in my life there was like this, I mean, the word you use, expectations, right? Like I think expectations ruled my thinking about the mountains, and my feeling of like being okay with myself, and feeling like, yes, I'm living the life I should. I'm meeting my expectations. I'm advancing in all these ways. Last year I skied the such and such, but this year I skied this, and this was bigger. And that became a very like intoxicating kind of way of engaging with the mountains that definitely helped me move forward. It definitely was something that pushed me. But, you know, then I've had these various, you know, losses, just soul crushing, you know, drop to my knees, like losses, where it's just like I shut the door, and I'm just like, just really soul crushed. And that's been years of that for me, you know, years of losing really dear and special friends. And now I find myself absolutely back in the mountains and back in love with the mountains, and obviously having chosen to continue to make that a part of my life. And the way I feel about it now is that it is so much more about this connection with nature. And that has been a very freeing way for me to re-engage with the mountains, free from a lot of expectations of like, should I operate at this level? Am I at this level? Should I back down to this level? And now I don't even think about that anymore. For me, it's more just like the immersion in the natural world. And And ultimately, I think as a human being, like that's what I'm seeking when I'm out there is, you know, what do the oceans and the mountains share in common is they are a wild place, right? They are a place where like you are not in control. Risk is inherent. Uncertainty is the only certainty. And going into that kind of a place, even if it's just simple, even if the snow sucks, um, but just like reconnecting with my natural habitat, being in the mountains, using my body to solve the challenges of the terrain, like that's like the way of thinking that I really am approaching the mountains with now. Um, and it's much easier for me to answer that question that people ask, of course, of like, you know, will you go back? And it's like, yeah, absolutely, I'm going back because that's my home. That's where I belong. That's, I think, ultimately like where we all belong is, you know, in the natural world. That's what our bodies have been from an evolutionary point of view, right? That's what we are evolved to do, to walk, to hunt, to travel, to explore, to discover. And I guess for me, that a life devoid of being in a place where I feel like, whoa, I'm just a passer through here. This isn't my this isn't a place that's necessarily safe for me. This is a place where I'm humbled. That's just like that's a place that I think is just always going to have a part in my life. And exactly how close to the edge, I think that just like continues. But my thing around that is I just try to tell myself that like I make no promises to anybody about my level of risk. If I wake up tomorrow and I feel like profoundly shaken and afraid of the mountains, I'm just going to come out and say it. I'm going to be like, I'm too scared. You know, I don't feel like going there. And I make no apologies for that. You know, I don't make any promises to anybody that I'm going to be, oh, but you're a mountain guide and you do this gnarly stuff. It's like maybe one day, and maybe the next day I make a different choice, you know. And I want to always put it out there and encourage other people too to put it out there. Like, you don't owe it to anybody to take risk. You know, you don't owe it to anybody. Like, do it because that's what feels like the right thing for you, and what, you know, the choice that you're called to. But like, there's no obligation. And in a sense, for me, there's no commitment. So like, I just take risk day by day. You know, I might end up processing it totally different in 6 months and feel like, you know what, I just want to ski mellow powder and just, you know, just back off. That'd be all good with me, you know.
That's kind of one of my new mottos: day by day, baby steps. Yeah, like tying your identity to something that's these expectations. It sounds like you're kind of in the same place as me, or like being able to disassociate like that from that, being able to disassociate your identity from having to do these things and just being content with what's right in front of you on a day by day basis, and listening to your gut. Like, that's like, I heard you say, like, I may not feel it one day. And when I was younger, I would listen to the other side, maybe listen to like, I wouldn't listen to my body, listen to the gut feeling, right? Listen to your heart, like all that. Like, it's so strong, and sometimes we overlook it because we're thinking about too many other things. Our mind gets in the way. And I, now I encourage people to just really find that stillness and connect with that and listen to that, because that will guide you more than anything else, I think, especially in a lot of these, like, anytime you're feeling that, like, really just take a pause and really listen. And I'm sure there's been times where you ignored it, and everyone has, and something's gone wrong, and you're like, fuck. And maybe you didn't listen, or I don't know. That's one of the. It's easier. I was talking to Jerry Lopez. You know who that is? Of course.
Sure.
So I'm like, yeah, man. I was talking to him after the thing. He's like, yeah. I was like, I didn't really have, we were talking about a swell after I got hurt, and like it was really good, and I was, I wasn't ready to go back and surf, and I'm like, I didn't really have any FOMO, FOMO, whatever. And he's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
and he just laughs. He's all FOMO, He gets it. Like at some point, the fear of missing out it's just so irrelevant because it doesn't matter. It's everything you have is right in front of you, and that's like this day by day thing is like. I guess I can really attest to this in a lot of ways because, and I think you can too, because when you come that close to dying and then you get a second chance, it feels like you feel so blessed. And I don't know if it'll wear off one day or what, but I'm still kind of in this blissful state where everything is a gift. My kids now, they're 2, and theirs are a little older, I think, but mine are 2 and 4. I look at them as my my greatest teachers, or my spiritual practice, teaching me things that every day, just following them around is just. But then I feel like sometimes I could be totally content just with that. There's moments, but then there's this swell coming, and I get like. Or like for you, maybe like this incredible storm, and then the conditions get good, then there's the high pressure coming, and you're like, it's like that same feeling, and maybe it's all setting up for a certain zone you want to go to, or for us, a certain break, and it builds, and then there's this like incredible feeling that is like undeniable. It just bubbles up, and maybe one day when I'm older, it won't bubble up as much, maybe, but right now it's still there, man, and I acknowledge it, but like you said, the nature, that connection, just being there and not setting expectations for yourself, and just being out. Like whether you go out in you go out on a backcountry trip, or I go out on the ocean on the day, not having those expectations totally just changed it for me, I think, in a lot of ways. And like you said, because
yeah. You were talking a little bit about the idea of like identity, and I think for me that has definitely been a trap that can make me want to do things that kind of quieten down that like intuitive listening to yourself. Is when I have felt like the world has expectations of me, maybe my clients have expectations of me, or just trying to live up to like this certain ideal of like what a person in my shoes should do. And for me, having seen these things and survived these close calls, and being a dad, it's much easier now for me to be like, no, I don't need that identity. I don't need that. Like, I'm not a skier. I'm not a guide. Like, I'm just me. I just happen to like the mountains. That's a place that makes me happy. That's a place that's, I'm really, charged by, but like, it doesn't need to be, I don't have to like attach myself to it and fulfill it like it's some destiny. It's like, no. I mean, what I do is just the product of being a very privileged person and having the liberty to just go roam around the mountains for my living is just crazy. In the world that we live in, with what we see going on around us, like, I would much rather feel like my identity is linked to just like being a good person and contributing in other ways. And the mountains are a place that I get refueled by, for sure. And I continue to be really psyched on, but the more I can like let go of having an identity that I've got to fulfill, the more free I feel to just roll the way I want to. Anyway, I mean, I say that as if like, that's my ideal anyway. That's what I'm aiming for. I'm aiming to feel freer from expectations and just more able to just engage with nature because it's nature, because it's wilderness, and because I feel like it's a satisfying place. as opposed to, yeah, a fulfillment of obligation or duty or identity or destiny and any of those things. And I mean, yeah, you know, like in the film, I said at one point that like surviving an accident, that's where you come that close to dying, and in your brain you've already died, or you've said your goodbyes, you know. And in my brain, when that accident happened, I said my goodbyes, you know. I had to like make my peace with going on to the next place. And when that doesn't end up happening and you end up surviving, it's like whatever chains or like shackles you had before, they're off, you know, and you are a free man. And that's how I feel. Like I don't feel much sense of obligation or like that I have to do anything in the mountains, you know. I'm just like, I feel freer and more able to just live the way I want to live. And
Nothing,
yeah.
nothing to prove.
Yeah, right. There you go. Yeah, nothing to prove, or not so much a strong attachment to certain outcomes, you know. And yeah, you know,
Do you
I
have a spiritual practice or any outlook on you want to share? Any rituals you do before you go out in the mountains?
yeah, I mean, not one that I could really like put a finger on, you know, but that's a hard one for me to even like define right now. But the answer is yes. I just don't quite know
Well,
how
it sounds like you're very spiritual, man. Same as me. Like right now, my kids are my spiritual practice. I'm just like rolling. Like, you know, I get charged up on just being out in the nature and connecting and just slowing down, surfing slowly.
Yeah.
Pumping
Yeah.
the brakes a little bit, but then opening it up when the opportunity presents, when I'm feeling it, and not
Yeah.
having like, oh, I gotta go here and I gotta go fast. I'm just like, just see what happens, and that's like for me the biggest like change, you know, just rolling with
Yes.
like the day by day thing, and not setting, like you said, not having expectations and not attaching to this identity creation that we have for ourselves, so that we had in the past. I mean, to get where you are, to get where you were, you had to do certain things. You had to. I mean, people come to you because of your experience in the mountains, and they trust you, and that trust is going. And you may think, oh well, you know, these guys, they want to do this line, but I'm not feeling it. They're going to trust you, and that's why they're going to you. And if they're not, and if they don't like it, then they can go somewhere else. And,
Yeah.
and that's kind of like the. I feel like we both aged. I feel like we're as we age, we change, and this conversation will be totally different in 5 years, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
like
Totally.
maybe next month. But no.
Yeah, one of my like strategies right now for like surviving the next chapter of my career, because I'm like you, right? Like I have not exhausted my like hunger for the mountains. And when it's a beautiful bluebird sunny day and I look up at the high peaks, I'm like, whoa, you know, a hunger for that experience. I love being up there where it's all complicated and involved, and you got to really rely on your partners. Like I love that. But one of my like strategies that I'm trying to really hone right now is frequency, right? And just reducing the frequency of being out there. Whereas before, it was like, unless the mountains were screaming no, then it was yes. And if there was something that, you know, was the obvious reason not to be in a certain place, then I would heed it. But now I'm like, no, now just look for the perfect windows and enjoy them, and let that linger for longer. Let that satisfaction of having like been in a wild place, let it just linger for a while. And, you know, maybe you get a couple weeks out of it before you feel like you got to be a dog on a bone
before the next shot.
kind of,
I
you know, like, and then you just like you're showing up really like prepared for the moment and really
what kind
just
of
with like so much appreciation, like it's really something special.
what kind of you know, talking about risk mitigation, like, and that I think a lot of it comes in with that mindset that you just said, just not having to just tackle line after line, but enjoying the the one line or the two lines or whatever, and enjoying the mountains. Are there certain um, things that have changed in your career, technology wise, or just, you know, culturally wise, that have that you guys use to mitigate the risks, like the avalanche bags, or there's those types of things, I guess? Like, are there certain things that have changed, or has it been pretty much the same things? Was there one big breakthrough?
I feel like, you know, no, is my feeling. Ultimately, no. Like, I don't think we are any safer than we were when I first started playing the game. Maybe we have deepened our understanding, maybe, but, you know, when you look at how people in the mountains are dying, it's in the winter and in this way that I roll, like it's mostly still avalanches and it's largely very experienced people. What is changing is certainly like the culture around it, and the how common it is. And there's so many people now who have the aptitude and the interest and the skills and the kit to go and, you know, play the big mountain game. And so there's a lot of increase in traffic for sure, and that is challenging, of course, because, you know, like
That's
in
scary.
surfing.
You can only help that with educating them, because you can't prevent them.
No,
So yeah.
no, and like if we're going to talk about how enriching a life in the wilderness is, then we should wish that for everybody else too. And, you know, we should create a culture that's welcoming, because
But you're in that business, right? You do avalanche training courses for groups and stuff, correct?
yeah,
So,
totally.
so
Yeah,
a newcomer could come to you and go, "I want to sign up for one of your." Are you offering them now?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, it's funny how parallel our programs are, right? Because you know, there's a lot of great avalanche education providers in our field, and who do a great job. But what we want to do, and the only um, people that we really serve, are those people who want to explore the wild terrain, the big mountain terrain, the complex terrain. There's a lot of skiers out there who want to go and ski powder and have a nice day and get a little exercise and hang out with their friends. And they're really well serviced by the existing avalanche education. But for that person who isn't satisfied by that and who's always like hungering for that really high risk experience that is the high alpine, that's where we work, and that's the program that we provide. It's called the Big Mountain Snow Safety Course, and it's basically like me and partners of mine who, you know, we try to operate like an open book, and we share like this is our method, not as guides, but like this is how we roll, this is how we actually do it. These are the questions that we're asking, these are our strategies, and, you know, hopefully equipping people who just have that hunger like I had in my 20s to be out there and make the call and travel through what's really a pretty dangerous environment.
Yeah, when I took the course you guys did for us in Salt or in Utah. Were you in Utah, right?
Yeah, that was, yep, the
Yeah, that
Patagonia.
was I learned so much. Thank you again. That was amazing. You guys did an awesome job um, preparing, and what you're doing is you're educating so people can assess and be safer in the mountains, which is awesome, right? You're offering an experience which will allow someone to enter that landscape, but with a different mindset, and hopefully with enough knowledge to make the right choices if something to prevent and if something bad happened. Um, kind of similar to what we do in the ocean with the brag stuff. There was an incident. Speaking on that, there was an incident on the big swell here last week on Saturday, that or Friday, whatever it was. But it was a big swell, and there was more jet skis than had ever been there, and a lot of the guys didn't have experience. And a big set came, and I don't know if you saw this video. The thing went viral, but there's one jet ski like shooting up like 30 feet and 60 feet in the air. Did you see that? Anyway, well, I'll show it to you. But anyway, they're all running for this one wave, and there's a certain technique. You can turn around and run in front of the wave, or you can try and get over it. And in experience, like this guy just pinned it and just went flying up this wave, and he could have landed on somebody, and another ski went flying up it, and then a photographer broke his back. He's in the hospital now, or maybe out, but he had to get surgery. Another guy broke his leg. It was kind of mayhem, and luckily there weren't more waves. But we did we invited the guys on the skis that drove the skis that people were talking about, and invited some of the lifeguards and Brian Keolana, who does bike. We did a debrief, and we didn't come down on them. We just offered to educate them, and you know, we said there's no wrong choices because the choices have already been made. Like, we just have to move on, right?
Yeah.
Like these guys were super apologetic, super bummed. The guy that was driving the ski that the photographer broke his back on, he acknowledged he didn't have experience. He was super down. So I think the debrief really helped him. And we all, you know, gave him a hug and just told him, dude, we got to train more and come to us, use this as a resource. But we realized, sure, I'd like to tell everybody they can't be out there because it's like our special wave. We don't want them there. That is not going to happen because we don't own that country. We don't own the ocean. So people are going to be out there. So all we can do now moving forward is offer services to educate and prepare people so that they can be out there safely. And that, I'll send you that video. It was pretty wild, but that just happened, and that kind of speaks on what you're saying. Like, and it sounds like there's going to be a big snow up in like 10 feet of snow in Tahoe or something crazy. So I mean, and there's probably not that great of a layer underneath, and it's probably going to be dangerous and probably blah blah blah. So like that type of thing, like, is, you know, that's scary, right? Like in your world, you're probably looking at that going, oh boy, like, you know, stuff could definitely go down. And yeah, like I was telling you earlier, I had a friend, like you said, the most experienced guys are the guys, a lot of times the guys that get hurt or killed in the mountains. And I told you about a friend of mine that got buried in Whistler not too long ago. But they got him out and gave him CPR and brought him back, and it's so scary. And same here in the ocean, like speaking on the technological advances in our world, in our sport, the biggest one in this, I think the 70s, was the leash. And that had some resistance because it was like, oh, well, if you need to wear the leash, then you shouldn't be out here. You can't swim in. But now everybody wears the leash. Then the next one was the foam impact vest. And I gave resistance. I kind of like laughed at that too a little bit when they first started wearing them. Some Brazilian guys were wearing them back in the early 2000s. We're like, look at these guys. They look like muscle suits. They saved my life last year. And then the last one was the jet ski was during this whole time too. It kind of came in the late 90s, 2000s. And Brian Keolana, who works with us in Bragg, kind of brought that into the lifeguards here, and it's kind of spread as like the #1 safety, water safety craft, and training people how to properly use those. So that was kind of parallel to all these advancements. But the last one was this inflatable vest, which is similar to the airbag. But like you said, you can't rely on any of those things. It comes down to, you know, listening to your gut and having the proper training and be able to deal with it on your own. Because, you know, what if the leash breaks, or what if the vest gets blown off you, or what if there is no jet ski? So, you know, and then it looks like in the mountains now everyone was wearing helmets, whereas not too long ago they weren't. Within the last 10 years, right? Or 5 years. on the ski mountains, the ski slopes.
Yeah, no, and in the high peaks for sure. Um, th those, the beacon technology is certainly advanced, and airbags have a role in some places. Um, but I think when you look at it from like the 30,000-foot view, looking down at the big picture, you see that ultimately, like, the keys to survival are being a good interpreter of nature, right? Because snow looks like snow. Snow looks white and looks beautiful. And you, as a skier, you have to be able to interpret what's below the surface, not just what's on the surface, and how what is happening below the surface also connects to the terrain. Um, and being able to just be a good interpreter of nature, that is ultimately what surviving avalanche terrain, in my opinion, is really all about. um like, in being an interpreter of nature is more than just having taken an avalanche class. It's also about like a mindset, because when we come into the mountains just like charging, and we're very focused on objectives, and we want to ski the such and such, and you know we like treat the mountains as a commodity, and I think I've definitely been in that mind frame many a time. But now, again, like, looking at it from what I call like the other side of the curtain, where I stand now, it's like, when I look at my accidents and things that I've seen go wrong, I see how the clutter of expectations and perhaps what's going on in life can obliterate just being able to observe nature and to make interpretations of nature, and then understand stability from there. And that really requires a very like engaged and quiet state of mind, and a very good connection with your partners, because no mountain guide, no avalanche professional, nobody can truly know what happens below the surface of the snow. It will always be a mystery. And the best way to survive a long life in the mountains, I think, is to have that mind frame I was talking about, of being an interpreter and being open, and drawing out other people in the group and trying to get that perspective that reflects more than just my vision of what's going on, but like, how does Joanne see it over here, and how does Peter see it over there, and like, what have you observed and what do you feel? And really, just when you come in with that mentality, that's like, none of this is certain, none of this is given, but if we are really listening, if we're really tuned in, perhaps we'll have a good enough understanding that we can travel safely through this terrain. And I think, early in your career, as you make these choices and you step into bigger terrain and you accomplish bigger things, you have these successes, and people around you start to see you as a leader, your confidence, it just rages, And the more success you have, the more it rages. And that's a really fun time in your life, because everything is just coming together and you're nailing it and you're crushing, and you got the photos to prove it, and it's dope. It's like, wow, this is insane. And then everything goes wrong, and someone dies, or you take the ride on the carpet, and then you just get so humbled, you get so crushed. And then coming back from there, you can regain, a way forward, but you'll never, in my experience, you'll never ever have that same confidence. And that confidence that you get in that early part of your career, when everything is just jamming along, is very magical, is very powerful, and it can enable some wild things that can be really fun. But it's not usually very sustainable, at least not if you're wired like I was, and like many of the people around me were. And it's funny now, having played the game for 20 years, I have so much less confidence now than I did 10 years ago.
When you talk about confidence, are you talking about your decisions in the
Yeah.
mountains? Like, I
Yeah.
would go across this area, but now I wouldn't. The same like 20 years or 10 like those types of decisions you're saying to get to a line or do a line. I would go down this space, but you're talking about the uncertainty of whether it will slide or not. That type of
Yeah.
decision.
Yeah, totally. Just
So,
like the feeling that, you know, there can come a time in your career if things are just like going great where you can get into really complicated terrain and you could be like, I got it. I know it. I got it. It's figured out. Let's go, and that type of confidence is what I'm talking about. That like now when I'm with someone who has that kind of confidence, I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. That scares me because I've been there. I've had that confidence at one point in my life and I've gotten smacked down and I've seen my friends get smacked down and I've taken the ride and I've lost friends. And it's like, I'll never again have that confidence. It's never coming back. And that's okay. I'm good with that. I'm good with now. I'm much more like, let me think about it for a minute. I don't know, Cole, what do you think? you know um and that's really what I want to cultivate. And
you went
um
from a risk taker to a risk technician.
yeah,
That's what we say. That's what we say. That's what we say.
yeah,
No, but I kind of I see what you're saying on the confidence, and I think a lot of that comes from as we're younger, ego plays a lot into that because of the rewards we get and the adoration and these lines and this personal challenge and all these things. But at the same time, there's going to be a day, there's going to be a moment that you just know it's right because all that experience that you talked about is compounded and you've transcended that identity you were before, but you still retain all the mountain knowledge. So pushing away that word confidence, there may be a situation that is exactly the same or even different, but even gnarly or whatever, that you'll just flow into because your mind, body, and nature, everything tells you to, and that doesn't require the confidence. That's just your collective experience. And I feel like you can call it whatever you want, but that's going to happen to you. You're going to be in a position where it just flows, and you won't even know it. You'll flow. And this is what happened to me the other day. I was sitting out there, and the conditions they're massive, but I felt this like peace and calm, like I was supposed to be there. And maybe before I would have called it confidence, but now I just accepted it, and it was just like, oh, I'm just here. If it's the right way it comes, I'm going to catch it. And it was just this totally different feeling. But I had, I had prepared mentally. I had put a safety ski in the channel. I had my safety vest on. I had this soft kind of helmet that with that high impact, that foam that hardens on impact that they put in motorcycle suits, that I put in this like hoodie. So if I were to hit my head on the reefer board, it wouldn't. I've worn a helmet since the accident, but I had a wipeout and it kind of tweaked my neck super hard. So this other slimmer thing kind of works. But anyway, I had all this, and I slept well the night before. The night before big days, you kind of like sleeps a little, the deal, the preparation, like you said, the whole thing. It's not just the line. It's not just the wave. It's the build up too. The excitement, the challenge, all of this. And that confidence, yeah, you talk about it like you'll never be there again, but you're still going to be in the mountains and you're still going to go do something that's for you. It's going to be this incredible experience, but it's relative to everyone else's experiences too. And it's going to be amazing. So I like where your head's at, but I don't want you to believe that I think confidence is almost I know where we're going with that, but you're still there because of all the experience and all the things that you've done. You're already in a position where you're in a different position. You understand what I'm saying?
yeah. I mean, there's a flip side to the coin, right? Because you can't operate in a high risk environment without confidence, right? Like you can question and you can doubt, but then when it comes time to go, you gotta go, you know. And when you commit, you have to commit, because your body has to be your friend. It has to be collaborating with you and moving with you so that you can do this challenging thing as best as you know how.
And
And
your
if
mind,
you,
you're gonna leave your thoughts, and your mind's gonna just move over here, and
yeah,
everything's just gonna flow.
yeah,
And that's
it
gonna
has
come
to.
back to you. You can talk all you want about it now, about not having the confidence, but when you're in that Zen moment, when you're in that moment on the mountains, and when you're feeling it, it's just, you're just going. You're just gonna go again, and it's gonna be that same you that you were, but it's gonna be different because everything is screaming go inside of you, and you're not thinking about it. But I know what you're saying. Like, our thoughts can be our worst enemies often. And now that we have these accidents, we go, oh, well, you know, we keep going back to that. But that's something we just deal with. And it will change. Like we said, it could be different in a year or 2 years. But
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm really just now getting back into the mountains, and for us, our like big mountain season is still yet to come mostly. I mean, there are little windows in a time like January, but really things become simpler and more reliable as the season wears on. And you know, I haven't really gotten there yet, so I haven't really been in that environment where it's like really high consequence and really complicated.
I'm a
Yeah,
little ahead
so
of, I'm a little ahead of you, and I'll tell you
yeah,
what,
exactly.
it feels good. Are you, I'm sure in the back of your mind, are you thinking about going back one day to the same line? I know this is a tough question, but like the same line you got in an avalanche on, is that like cross your mind? Like, I need to go back there one day?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I kind of think it might not even be that big a deal, because the terrain, you know, is serious, but it was the conditions in that moment that took me down. So I think like if I had fallen, say, and just taken a spill and tomahawk down a line, that would be a bigger barrier for me to feel like, okay, I've got to go make peace with that and go back there again. Um, I don't think that repeating that line would be like a huge mountain to climb, you know?
So if someone told you you could never do that line again, you'd be totally okay with it.
Yeah, I think I could go either way on that. You know, I think for me, it's just like getting back into that really high consequence type of environment, whether it's at home here in the Tetons or halfway around the world. When you get into that place where you're like, oh boy, this is game on, and I have to nail this, it has to be perfect. Because if I get avalanched here or if I fall here, it's game over. Those situations, I haven't gone back there yet. Um,
But you want to go
so
back to them. But you'd like to go back to them.
yeah, I would.
Dude,
Yeah,
here we are
I
again.
like it there. You
It's
know,
genetic.
yeah, I love it there. I mean, I do, no question. Every time it goes blue in the mountains and I look up and I see all this, you know, gnarly complex thing, I'm like, yeah, I want to do this and then that and link it all together. Like, yeah, that hunger hasn't really subsided. Maybe it will, you know, or probably it won't. But what I'm hoping is that I can find a balance where I still have those experiences, but I just don't need to like do them every day, all the time. Just go, 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 you know?
Enjoying the moments, like you said, rather than like full speed. Like just slowing
Yeah.
it down a little.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, maybe you have this too. You mentioned Jerry, like for you, maybe that, you know, that's like a mentor, but for me, there are certain people who I feel like have navigated these types of moments in their career and found a way forward. And for me, that like Jeremy Jones has really like helped me a lot with that. I always look to Jeremy because, you know, here's a guy who like made his career riding the gnarliest things. The whole world knows Jeremy Jones, and everybody has expectations of what like Jeremy's going to do and how big he's going to go. And, you know, from the Himalayas to like jumping out of helicopters, like all the gnarliest things. You know, and here's a guy like you go riding with Jeremy, and he is never happier than right now, right here, just doing my thing, you and me, like hanging with my kids, shredding with my friends. And he's just like a guy who's really found peace with like being in this new chapter. And he'll still say like, oh yeah, like when it all comes together, and you can really go big, it's super sweet. But he's not like chomping and chewing his arm off trying to get there. He's just like very at peace with where he's at. And so I'm just like trying to channel Jeremy. I feel like as a dad, and
Yeah,
I don't know, he's kind of like a somebody I really look up to in that way. And I'm like, okay, yeah, like he's clearly at peace with this whole thing, and he'll seize the moment when it's there, and when it's not there, he'll find joy in like, protect our winters and hanging with my children, and riding at the resort and whatever.
Yeah, wisdom. He's incredible. I did a trip with him to Iceland. Him and Forrest and Brian and Gucci.
Okay. Yeah.
We went on the Aurora Arctica, this boat to the Northwest Fjords, and
Epic.
And like you said, man, he was just so stoked, like a little kid, all day, every day.
Yeah.
Love that. It's like your kids, like looking at that same passion and fire in your kids when they get a new toy or whatever it may be. It's like it's the same thing, and being able to carry that stoke with you as you get older, and not let all these negative things come into your life. And especially now with like everything that's the world, like everything, it's nice to have this outlet, the mountains and the ocean, and be able to enjoy it. And I think everybody that should be able to enjoy it that can. And it's incredible that you offer these types of classes and educational programs to offer people experience. It's really neat, man.
Yeah, thank you, Kohl. Thanks so much. I mean, yeah, it's you're absolutely right. It's a total privilege to have a life that's built around being out there. And to me, one of the most satisfying things right now is like connecting with that next generation of riders and being like, well, I don't have it all figured out, but this is my method. This is how I roll. Like, this is my thought process. And here you go. I can share it freely, and you'll make of it what you make of it, and you'll evolve it. And, in 10 years from now, maybe I'll come take the course from you. But here it is. And
that's sharing your knowledge, man, because it sounds like you have a wealth of it. And I took your course. It was incredible. So people were psyched, man, to take it. I'd like, and if you come out here to Hawaii, maybe we'll get you out here and you can do one of our ocean courses.
Man, that'd be amazing. I have a huge hunger for the ocean, and I've never really sunk my teeth into that. But
it's the same thing. It's just all melted. The snow just melted snow.
I feel it, man. It's another powerful medium.
You just keep following it down the hill, you'll end up here.
That's about right. Well, Kohl, it's been an hour, and it's been a great hour.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed it, man, and thank you so much. Lending your voice to this conversation, really kind of a special thing.
Yeah, brother, right on. And like Neil Armstrong said, there can be no great accomplishment without risk.
Yeah.
And you know what? Like, but we mitigate the risk and we do our things. And like, he said that. I was just kind of reading something the other day about him and everything. Oh, here's Hakia. Hakia, come say hi to Uncle. Come. Come say hi.
All right, there we go.
This is the 2-year-old. She just turned 2 yesterday.
What's her name?
Say hi. Yeah, that's Uncle Z. But yeah, man, I really appreciate what you do, and thanks for connecting. And I just honestly just want to talk about, initially your film was epic, and the whole selfish thing, like when you mentioned that, I was like struggling with that, and like this makes me feel better. I think, we just educate, we share, and we just keep going and listen to our hearts, man, day by day, rather than come visit, come to Hawaii.
I'm going to take you up on that, Kohl.
Yeah.
And thanks to all of you guys for all your comments and kind words, and just cheering us on and being here. It's been a super cool experience. So peace to everybody out there.
Yeah. See you guys. Aloha. Thank you.
Aloha.